Okay, let's talk modifications. So first of all, I'm going to introduce you to my bike. This is my 2017 Ducati Monster 821 in the most beautiful Ducati yellow paintwork. So this is the bike that I chose for my first big bike. It's my second bike. Before this I had a 125. I did no mods to the 125, and I bought this with a handful of modifications already done, and I've added a few in my ownership. So in this video, I'm going to go through the modifications that are on the bike, so ones I've done and the previous owner have done, the cost that modification would cost now to go out and buy the bits to do it, and explain why that modification is beneficial, whether it's just a visual mod or whether it actually offers some sort of upgrade over an OEM part, and whether I believe it's something that's easy for you to do. So I'm going to give it a torque wrenches out of 5, let's say. So it's going to be 5 torque wrenches is something that I think you're going to need to go to a garage for, and possibly 1 torque wrench is something anyone can do with the most basic of tools. Okay, so first of all, we're going to start with a radiator guard. So this particular bike has a radiator guard and an engine guard underneath it. So what do? Radiator guards are designed to, as the name suggests, protect the radiator. So it's a piece of trim that goes at the front of the radiator just down here, sits within the cowling on this bike, and protects the radiator from all that stuff that gets flicked up from your front wheel into it. So it's preventing stone damage, rocks, that sort of stuff, puncturing the radiator and causing a coolant leak. Its main job there is to lengthen the life of the bike's radiator. So it's a protective modification that is there to prevent you from being stranded at the side of the road with a radiator puncture, or your coolant going absolutely everywhere, blowing the engine, causing all sorts of issues with overheating. So the radiator guard is a piece of gear that I recommend everyone should fit to their bike, because there's just literally no protection down the front here on most bikes. That will probably set you back. Looking online, the Evotech one that's fitted to this bike is about 130, 140 quid with the engine guard. It's pretty straightforward to do. There's plenty of YouTube tutorials. It's a few screws and stuff at the back of this cowling to take off on this bike. It slots in within the cowling with a couple of rubber bushes, and then you clip everything back together and bolt everything back down. So it actually uses the OEM mounting points to fit together. So I would say that is a 2 torque wrenches out of 5 to fit. Anyone should be able to do it. Follow the instructions, plenty of YouTube tutorials out there, and it's one of those modifications that should be high up on any new bike owner's list. Okay, the next modification I want to talk about, again, this is something that I recommend every new bike owner, or even old bike owners getting a new bike, should be considering getting, and it is these, crash protection. So this particular bike, I've got the frame sliders just here, and then on the rear swing arm, I've got the crash bobbin, and on the front, I've also got a fork bobbin as well on the front. Now, these are designed to take the impact if you are clumsy and you drop the bike, or if you're in a situation where the bike goes down, if you low side it on the road or something like that. The idea is that these take all the impact rather than expensive things like your exhaust or your radiator or your fuel tank. So these are about 200 and something quid, 220, 230 I think it was for the full set. So that includes the front fork sliders, the rear bobbins, and the, frame sliders. So about 240, 250 quid I paid for these from Evotech Performance. There are other brands, again, like I mentioned, RNG is another really good brand to look at. They're always marginally cheaper than Evotech. How easy are they to fit? These were an absolute cakewalk. So the fork sliders and the rear swing arm bobbin, it's just a metal rod that goes through the middle of it with 2 10mm nuts on either end. So you just thread them through and then clamp down the 2 10mm nuts. Really, really simple. You just need a socket set. This bit was a little bit more involved on my bike, because my bike uses the frame, this trellis frame, as the engine mount. So these 2 silver bolts you see here are actually holding the engine in. So I had to support the engine from underneath, just using a simple car jack, bit of wood, and then we took these nuts out and then bolted them back in again, fitted this bit, torqued everything up to spec, and then did the other side, because if you take all 4 out at the same time, the engine's going to come crashing out the bike. So do one side at a time. It was a little bit more involved. I would say it's 2.5, maybe 3 torque wrenches out of 5 in the complexity field, but that's not to say that your bike would be that complicated. Some of the bikes, they just have the bobbin go straight into a dead spot, like a hole, a blanker slot. They don't have to take any engine mount points or anything out. But even that, tooling wise, it was very simple. It was just a socket set and a torque wrench. Right, so on to mod number 3. So again, this is one that most bikers will do to their bike when they pick them up, and that is the tail tidy. Now, I think we're all in agreement that the OEM tail tidies that manufacturers are putting on are horrible things. Big, garish plastic thing that sticks right out over the back tyre. Yeah, it acts as a mud guard, but they just look dreadful. So 99% of bikes you see will be fitted with a tail tidy of some sort. Now, a tail tidy offers absolutely no performance gains whatsoever. It is literally just a visual mod that brings the number plate closer to the back of the bike, holds all your indicators and stuff in place, and it just makes the bike look a little bit more appealing. It just shortens that frame, makes the whole bike look a little bit better. So on my bike, it's the, again, I'm a big Evotech fanboy. It is the Evotech unit. This particular one was 140 quid, I think. I did have an RNG one on before that. They're about £80. Again, did exactly the same job, but me being me, I wanted everything to match. It didn't feel right to have all these Evotech bits and then an RNG piece. So I had to go out and, I say I had to. I didn't have to. I wanted to. I wanted to fit it with the Evotech unit. So yeah, that's what these do. So I would say this was like 3 torque wrenches out of 5 to put together and put on the bike. I had to build it up halfway before fitting it to the bike, then wire everything in, and then finish building up several plates and protector bits to seal the wiring in. It was a bit of a faff, but not impossible. The instructions made it harder than it needed to be. So I would say this was like 3 torque wrenches out of 5 to put together and put on the bike. But again, if you go for another brand, you might find it really easy. And you don't have to go for one of the name brands. There's absolutely gazillions of tail tidies. You've got Flip and Dip. There's another one if you want to evade the police. I mean, take photos of your bike without your number plate on show. There's also like cheap Chinese brands, all sorts of like rip-off stuff you find all over eBay and Wish and stuff like that. Completely your call. There are options out there, basically. Okay, so next, we're getting progressively harder. No, we're not, because I've just seen them. We're doing mirrors. So I've fitted a set of bar ends, and again, this is a nice, simple, easy modification. I'd say this was about 1 torque wrench, if that, half a torque wrench out of 5 fitting these. Now, I understand this isn't a mod that everyone's going to like. Some people do like the big sticky up mirrors. Some bikes, actually, their mirrors do look quite decent. But I feel like on the Ducati Monster, this particular bike, the mirrors just ruin the look of the bike. I like that kind of low-level, flat, kind of sleek look that the bike offers with the bar ends. I felt that those big sticky up ears that had the mirrors on the end of them just ruined the overall feel and look at the bike, and actually made it look a bit older than it is. So I've gone for a set of bar ends. These are manufactured by a company called Rizoma. Again, there are a billion companies out there, but what I would warn you against is if you're going for bar end mirrors, getting something from a decent reputable brand, because you're going to get better quality materials used to manufacture them. You can get them for absolutely ridiculously cheap. I've seen them for about £4 on Temu. You don't want to be getting stuff like that because it's going to come made from Chinesium metal. The second you even show it an Allen key, the bolts are going to start rounding off. You don't want to be messing around with stuff like that, and they're not going to offer you the visibility or the adjustments that you're going to need to have a safe vision out of the rear of your bike. As I said, fitting wise, really, really easy. It was just 1 nut on the end. I took the original bar end out and then put these ones in, nip that up, position them how I want them, job done. Really that simple. Oh, cost. I didn't mention cost with these, did I? So the Rizoma ones are about 80 quid for these particular ones. But like I say, there's millions of brands out there. You'll be able to shop around. Okay, next on the list, we're going to talk about brake levers. Now, this is a little bit more complicated. I've watched plenty of videos on it. I didn't actually fit these ones myself. These came on the bike when I fitted it. But looking at the videos and stuff, I would say you need some confidence with it because you are messing around with safety features, brakes, clutches, that sort of stuff. So I'd say this one, because of the added complexity of the confidence you need to be able to do this job safely, I'd say this is more like a 3.5 torque wrenches out of 5 when it comes to the work. You don't want to buy cheap. We've all seen the videos on Instagram of bikers with cheap levers and stuff and them breaking off. So I'd recommend only buying premium quality levers for your bike. I've got a set, again, of, can you guess, Evotech fitted to the bike. They are fully adjustable. Now, what do adjustable levers offer over standard levers? Well, as the name suggests, they're adjustable. So as I twist this, you'll see the lever goes in and out, gets closer to me or further away. So it's not actually adjusting the pivot point. The pivot point stays the same just here. It's just a lever's reach distance. How far I have to reach forward with my fingers gets shorter or longer. So it makes it a little bit more customizable to you and your own body shape. So for me, for example, the standard levers just felt a little bit too far out, whereas these nice adjustable ones, I can bring them in 2 clicks, which just gives me that little bit of extra leverage, as it were, that little bit more room to be able to reach out and get onto those levers. So yeah, I recommend those. Cost-wise, you should be spending anywhere between £80 to £100 for a set of levers as well. You can go a bit over on that, but 80 to 100 should get you a decent brand. All right then, so moving forward, the next point I'm going to talk about is indicators. So I decided to fit a set of LED indicators to my bike quite recently, actually. And again, I've gone for a kit that was designed specifically for my bike. So you can get LED indicators for absolutely peanuts, but you have to buy adapters and all sorts of stuff to get them to fit onto your bike, and you have to start researching things like, does your bike need relays or does it need resistors to stop problems like hyper flashing when you move from a standard bulb to an LED setup. I invested in the Evotech set, obviously, because this whole video seems to be a catalogue for Evotech. You can get cheaper ones. Orangey do a really nice set as well. I did contemplate those, but to get those to fit my bike, I had to buy additional cabling, I had to buy resistors. There was a whole faff with like mounts and stuff that I had to buy as well to get them to bolt in. So whilst their indicators looked really good and they were significantly cheaper than the Evotech kit, I knew the Evotech kit was going to be plug and play. It was going to arrive, I was going to be able to wire it in, absolutely no problem. Now, LED indicators do actually offer a safety advantage over standard indicators as well. So this is quite a nice little mod because they're really, really bright, way brighter than standard bulbs. And not only that, visually, they just look so much better than the standard plastic housing that Ducati used. They just, I don't know why, they just use these big, horrible, cheap, they feel naff and they're all wobbly and just horrible, cheap indicators that really date the bike. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for me to go for the Evotech kit on this one. So again, you can shop around, you'll find all sorts of different price points. You can buy cheap ones, you can buy expensive ones, they all do the same job. Just make sure you do your research into the brand you're buying, and make sure you buy all the right bits you need to actually mount them up to the bike, because you are going to need, if you go for a cheap set anyway, additional cables, mounts, all sorts of stuff. But for me, I went straight to the Evotech and bought the ones built for this bike. So they're going to go for about 140 quid for the kit that I'm talking about here. Like I say, you can get cheaper ones. And then when it comes down to the fitment of them, I would say this was a little bit more involved. It's still not rock hard. I'd say it was like 3.5 torque wrenches, 4 if you're new to working on bikes yourself, out of 5. So I had to remove the headlight, which was pretty straightforward. 2 10mm nuts on the back of them, a couple of little mounts and stuff, then wiggle it off. There's a bit of faffing around with the cables in there. It's very tight to try and get all the cabling in, especially with the additional resistor adapters and stuff that I had to put in there for these indicators. And then for the rear, the tail tidy had to come apart, and then you just remove the top of the seat cover. Underneath it, you can access all the wiring. But you had to take the tail tidy off to mount everything in there. So yeah, there's a bit involved. It was a nice afternoon tinkering with the bike. It is a bit involved, but you can do it all with the most basic socket set. You don't need a degree in wiring. So don't be scared of wiring, because that might be one of the things that's putting you off doing it, is not understanding how easy it is to wire these things in. It is pretty straightforward. Okay, so moving on, we're back down to a really simple, easy mod. We have got the exhaust hanger and pillion peg delete. Now, my bike doesn't have pillion insurance. I didn't take it out. I've got no one I want to put on the back of the bike. I ride for myself. So yeah, I didn't see the point in keeping the pillion pegs on there. So they were one of the first things to go. So pillion peg delete, that is an Evotech bracket there, which acts as the exhaust hanger, because on the original bike, this particular pillion peg set was also doubled up as the exhaust hanger. And on the other side, because there's no exhaust, there's just a blanking plate that's just 2 bolts on there. In total, this job was 5 bolts. It is clearly one of the easiest mods. Again, this is half a torque wrench out of 5 in difficulty. Really simple modification to do, and I think it just makes the bike look significantly better. The parts for this were about £70. And again, there are a billion different cheap alternatives out there for different bikes, different brands. Some of them might not even need the exhaust hanger, so your bike might not need that for the pillion peg delete. You just find yourself having 2 little blanking plates. Absolutely peanuts. So that's a mod that I think makes the bike look significantly better and was really, really cheap and easy to do. Okay, so the final mod I'm going to talk about is one of my favourites, and it's one that 99% of you are going to go out and do immediately when you buy your bike, and that is the exhaust mod. So as you can see on mine, I have now got the Termignoni carbon fibre double can there on mine, and it is probably my favourite modification on this entire bike. It sounds incredible, and it just finishes the overall look of this bike off, in my opinion. But this was probably the most complicated, not because it was difficult to do, just because there is some coding that needed to be done for this particular bike to have the slip-on. So by taking the original exhaust off, it changed the entire flow of the bike's exhaust system, which meant it was running absolutely dreadfully. It actually fouled a spark plug. So I had to go to Ducati to get what's known as an up map put on the bike. Hey, come here. Come here. Stop. That's too much. Come on. That's too much. So it had to go back to the dealership, and Ducati had to then fit something, or rather code something called an up map to the bike. So they flash the ECU to let it know it's got a different exhaust system on it, not the standard exhaust cam. And that meant that it changed the fuel in to ensure that it was no longer running rich or lean, I can't remember which way around it was, and stop it from fouling the next set of spark plugs that were put in the bike. And since then, it's been running absolutely brilliantly. So yeah, that was probably the most complicated modification on the bike. And even then, it's still not going to be 5 torque wrenches out of 5. I would say that's like 4 torque wrenches out of 5 because of the faffiness of having to have it all done. But yeah, it's just a couple of bolts underneath. It's called a slip-on for a reason, because the old system slips off from about here and then slips back on again and clamps back down with this V-band clamp, or whatever you want to call it, at the bottom there. Nips all back up and then bolts in here with a single bolt for the hanger. The most complicated bit I didn't do. I had to take it to a dealership. They plugged it in and told it there was a new exhaust on it. Cost-wise, very expensive to go for an exhaust system like that. I think the exhaust and the map is getting on for £1,000. Very, very expensive, but you don't have to do that. There are cheaper exhausts out there, things like Leo Vince. You can get Akropovic, I don't know how it's pronounced, another brand, you know the one. Yeah, you can get those systems as well. It depends on the brand. You can spend upwards of £1,000, but you can also get systems for about 500-600 quid that might not need remapping and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, do some shopping around for that. But what I want to say at the very end of this video, as we wrap it up, is to caveat that this exhaust actually cause the most complications when it comes to insurance as well. So obviously every single modification you carry out to your bike, you need to be declaring to your insurance company. That is absolutely vital. Whether it's simple things like these frame sliders, crash bobbins, rad guards, bar end mirrors, you need to be making sure that every single modification is declared to your insurance company, because these are slippery bastards at the end of the day, and they will do anything they can to get out of paying that premium if you're in the event of an accident. Anyway, that's me talking about bikes. So if you are enjoying this kind of content, if you like what I'm doing with the channel, please do like, subscribe, follow along, come along this journey with me. I am going to try and grow this channel over the next 12 months and see where I end up. If it gets nowhere, it gets nowhere. But the best way you can support me and motivate me to come out and keep making videos like this is to like and subscribe and share it with your friends. And you can also find me on TikTok and Instagram on the handles that I've put somewhere on the screen. Yeah, well, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you learned something. And I'll see you in the next one. Okay, so now moving on. Oh, it's my dog. What do you want? Wilson, you going to start barking? Of course you are. There's a dog barking, so why aren't you barking?